And you've been listening to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki holding the daily press briefing. She was joined earlier by two top economic advisors who discussed President Biden's upcoming executive order on U.S. supply chains. They said the country is getting out of the business of reacting to supply chain issues and is focused on making the supply chain more resilient. Psaki went on to say the president did not hold back his displeasure in a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin over actions taken against Alexei Navalny. She also fielded questions about whether the $15 minimum wage that the president wants will make it into the final COVID relief package, by saying the approval process is still underway. For more on all this, I want to bring in CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Hi, Ed. Great to see you. So let's talk about the executive order that President Biden will sign to help America's supply chains later today. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is in response, Tanya, to concerns, especially, for example, in the auto industry, which is struggling to find enough semiconductor chips to build cars these days. And it's actually led to some furloughing of workers across several of the nation's largest auto manufacturing plants. And so what is essentially being done here is the administration will set up a 100-day review period to look at the supply chains for four specific items: computer chips, large capacity batteries that might end up in certain kinds of vehicles, especially electric cars, pharmaceuticals, given that there are obvious concerns there about how quickly vaccine is being made in this country and other medicines that might be needed in response to the pandemic, and then minerals, including rare earth minerals. The idea here, again, this comes in response to a big shortage of these supplies and a growing concern that the various industries that rely on them are relying too much on overseas manufacturers, Chinese semiconductor manufacturers, for example. And so the hope here is that over the next few months, they can put together a system that would make it easier, quicker, faster to produce those items. Later, they'll look at issues like public health and biological preparedness, IT issues, transportation, energy, food production, to ensure that those supply chains are also being properly run and that they are relying a little bit more on American-made goods.
All right, Ed, two Senate committees have now delayed votes on the confirmation of President Biden's pick for Office of Management and Budget, Neera Tanden. We heard Jen Psaki there say the White House still supports her nomination. But what more can you tell us about this? Will she realistically be able to get enough support to get through?
That is the question of the day, Tanya, and quickly becoming the question of the week. The White House continues to stand by Neera Tanden despite the fact that she lacks at least one Democratic vote in a 50-50 divided Senate. Even one Democratic defection can be fatal for a nominee unless they have Republican support. And as of right now, there is no Republican senator publicly supporting her. The one to watch is Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who has not yet said how she might vote in terms of the Tanden nomination, and had said to reporters yesterday that she would be waiting for those committee votes today to see whether or not she would support her, whether there was enough support to do so. By postponing those votes, it doesn't necessarily kill it, but it puts off for an unforeseen amount of time when exactly they might vote to get her out of committee and onto the full Senate. But this is the most at-risk cabinet nominee at this point. There are 9 that have been confirmed by the Senate. That lags behind the number that had been confirmed at this point in the Trump and Obama presidencies. But of course, the transition was a bit bumpier, and of course, the Senate had to spend its first few days of this new session worrying about an impeachment trial. We're expecting votes later this week on the nominees to lead the Departments of Energy and Education. The CIA director nominee is going through a pretty easy confirmation process this afternoon in the Intelligence Committee. And next Monday, we expect the Judiciary Committee to vote on Merrick Garland's nomination to be Attorney General, which would suggest he might be in that job by midweek next.
So moving along, but not as quickly as hoped. All right, so Ed, finally, the House is expected to approve President Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan this week. Remind us what is in this bill and when people might begin to see the relief.
Yeah, $1.9 trillion or so, and it's expected to be voted on and passed by the Democratic-controlled House on Friday. That's according to the Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer. No signs of Republican support for it in the House, at least not right now. Republican leaders earlier today criticizing the size and scope of this legislation, pointing out that, among other things, it doesn't necessarily get all that relief out this year, but over the course of the next several years. Among other things in this legislation, $1,400 stimulus checks for certain middle or lower income Americans if they qualify, potentially smaller checks depending on your income level if you hit those thresholds. Billions of dollars to back up vaccine programs and testing centers across the country. Billions of dollars for schools and other public facilities to get retrofitted to allow students to return during the pandemic. Hundreds of billions of dollars in relief to cash-strapped cities and states, places like Baltimore or Oklahoma City, other states that are struggling to balance the books right now because of a decline in revenues generated by sales tax or by just tourism and people visiting different parts of the country, and a host of other things. Again, Republicans say not all of this is related directly to responding to the pandemic, which is what the president said this was designed to do. Democrats turn around, including the president, and say, look, this is necessary. We have to spend this kind of money right now to juice the economy, to help struggling Americans and struggling institutions and cities that need the aid. What would you cut? Today, the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said, how much time do you have? We'd love to go through it with you, Mr. President.
All right. Well, Ed O'Keefe at the White House, thank you so much.